Hey guys, Steven Martinez with The American Dream. I just want to say a big thanks to all our supporters and fans. It's because of you guys that we're able to keep growing. Having said that, please don't forget to follow and subscribe. It means a lot to us. That's what helps us keep growing. And also, I hope you guys enjoy the next episode. Hey guys, welcome back to The American Dream podcast. I'm here with another very special guest, my boy Ryan Kelly, closing Miami.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Mr. Closer.
Woo! We try.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah,
I'm
me
excited.
too.
I know we spoke a little bit just now before we started filming, and it's really interesting to, I guess, hear your story and you asking me about my story. But for anyone that doesn't know Ryan Kelly, tell me a little bit about yourself from, as a young kid to where you are now.
Sure. No. Well, first off, man, I'm pumped to be here. I've been watching your show for the last few months, ever since our mutual friend there, Kaiser. And it's great. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited, and thanks for having me.
Likewise.
But yeah, man, the story is just, I think all of us have our own wild stories, right? Like that got us to where we are. I was a Boston-born Irish Catholic guy, and raised by two amazing parents, and a lot of love, not too many extras, but great parents who showed me good morals. And I was born and raised there, and I grew up, went to high school in Billerica, Massachusetts, and I had a really successful hockey career that ended up bringing me through college and pursuing into the professional arena, and ended up suffering a really bad injury. I ended up shattering my face and had reconstructive surgery and 16 screws and 4 metal plates, and it ended my career, right? So at 22 years old, you think you have your destination all lined up, and then something like that happens. And it just kind of created this moment in my life where I needed to start reestablishing, who I was. Since 4 years old, I was a hockey player. And then to kind of be thinking that maybe this is going to turn into a profession, and then have it kind of ripped away in a second was abrupt. And it turned me into a new thought process, which ended up being a blessing, right? I think everything happens, it's cliche to say, but things do happen for a reason. And for me, it ended up bringing me somewhere that I'm blessed and love where I'm at in my life right now. But it forced me to kind of reassess, and I never finished college. I did hockey for 2 years, and then when I left UMass Lowell, I took an offer to move to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was trying to pursue potentially a professional career, and that's where the injury took place. So when I got back to Boston, I had to figure out what I wanted to do, and I got into the hotel business. I always I was never a big drinker, but I always was social, and I loved to be in certain atmospheres and engaging and having fun, but never really took part in all the extracurriculars. So it was an atmosphere and an environment I always was able to find success. So I opened the W Hotel in Boston as a food and beverage manager, and then I worked my way up and opened another hotel, and spent my 20s and early 30s in that arena. And
the hotel industry.
Yeah, all hotel hospitality, right?
Okay.
Dealing with people. In the hotels I would be working were pretty high end, so typically the demographic that you're engaging with are on that level. And I was traveling to Miami my whole life, right? Boston, Miami's kind of like the closest destination, and as a young guy, I was exposed to more of the fun side of Miami, and you go down and it's all these amazing nightclubs like Live and 11 and all these crazy places. But when I made the decision to move there, I said, look, if I'm going to be successful in a city like this, number one, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My original plan was, let's go down there and let's work at a hotel. I think the entertainment and food and beverage industry in Miami is second to none. So that was my thought process, and I rolled the dice, man. I literally made the decision. I went home, I sold everything I could. I had a yard sale in my house. The couch was gone, the chairs, everything you could muster up. I packed up my Jeep Grand Cherokee and my cat, and we road tripped down to Miami with no plans, Steve. And I tell you, not telling the family, because sister and moms are all going to stress about what, oh no, everything's fine, I have a place. I had no place to stay planned. I did not have a job lined up. But I felt it, and you get to those stages in your life, I feel where something tells you, hey, look, it's now's the time. Now's the time.
Almost homeless at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't want to make it too dramatic. Like, you know, I had my savings, I had a few bucks, and I just didn't have a plan, but I knew that I had a plan, right? So when I got down there, I had to do the hard things, right? Like, and just like we were talking about before the cameras turned on, you know, like there's really no blueprint to success. You just kind of have to find what you take to and what you're passionate about. And, you know, if you believe in something and in your destination, I think it's possible for you to get there. But it's, you know, I went down there and I said, look, I'm going to print out resumes. I'm going to get an Airbnb so I have a place to be comfortable. And I'm going to literally just walk down South Beach to all the nicest hotels. And that's what I did, like right hand to God. I started at, you know, the Satai, it was a no. I went to the W, it was a no. And I had a great resume, you know. It's just, I didn't know anyone, you know. So it's no, no, no. And I worked all the way down from 1st to 23rd Street on Collins Ave. And at this point, you're starting to wonder, like, maybe it's back to Boston. In the last hotel, I actually remember I ran out of resumes. I had to go make a copy at one of the hotels who rejected me. So I took my resume and I brought it to a property called the One Hotel. And the One Hotel, it's a gorgeous, beautiful resort-style hotel down in Miami. And I walked in and I sat down. I asked for a manager. And, you know, eventually, half hour later, a manager comes down, and the first thing he says, you know, we're not hiring any food and beverage management at this time. I said, no problem. I just wanted to come in and introduce myself. And we started talking and just sharing each other's stories. And then before you know it, you know, the conversation went from 10 minutes to like 45. And by the time the conversation ended, he said, look, I want you to stay right here. There's someone else I want you to meet. So he leaves. This guy's name was Matt Kiner. I'll never forget him to this day because he was one of the first people to give me an opportunity in Miami.
Beautiful.
And he said, look, I want you to meet the GM of the hotel. Just, you know, so in the future if something opens up, and that's what I did, and I ended up getting the job. And it was
straight away, or?
Yeah, no, it was pretty much at the end of that day, you know, at the end of those conversations. And it just was me being open and honest. You know, I told him, like, I have experience, but I have no experience here in Miami. I'm a white boy from Boston. I don't speak the language, right? So there's a lot of things working against me, but I will tell you, you know, I'm upfront, I'm honest, I'm transparent, and I'm a hard worker. So, like, if those are attributes that you guys are looking for, you know, give me an opportunity. And they did. And I made sure that I did everything I could with that opportunity. And my goal really wasn't financial at the time. It was more like trying to find good people, you know, try to find some people to connect with. Because I don't have to tell you, your whole platform is about bringing people together that are like-minded, right? Like it's people who have common interests. Maybe we don't know each other, but a lot of the same things that you're thinking, I'm thinking. And so when I went down there and I got that position, I said, look, I'm gonna do my best to just smile at everyone and try to shake as many hands as I can and do as much networking as I can to see if there's any more doors that are gonna open, right? And that's what happened. So thankfully, because of my hockey career, I had a lot of former friends that ended up going into the pros, and they'd all come and visit and call me, and these are all still good friends. And I'm like, hey, I'm at this beautiful hotel, you know. So now I'm getting people to stay at the hotel, and then they're coming up to my outlet, which was on the rooftop, and again, beautiful space. And you know, it became, you know, my office, right? So I would meet you, and I'd come, and it started to go amazing, and then COVID. Right. So COVID hits, and I think you were just mentioning, like, your pivot kind of took place a little bit during COVID as well.
100%. Yeah.
And just like that, you know, hotels are closed. So here I am, kind of like back to the beginning, in one of the most expensive cities there is to live in. And I said, okay, you know, like, this is life, right? Like, life's gonna give you these, like, walls you gotta kind of maneuver past. And so COVID came and all the hotels closed, and thankfully at this point I'd been there for about 1.5 years, and I'd met a lot of people. And you know, my approach when I meet people is you know, ask questions, figure out what they're about, like, give a little bit of information and see if there's a connection. And I did a lot of that, and I ended up connecting a lot with GMs of other clubs and other restaurants. And you know, I made it my business to reach out to all of them and say, hey, look, why don't you come to my restaurant and, you know, bring your wife, bring your kids, and just try to create those, almost like a favor trading system with all these industry folks. Now, all of a sudden, COVID, nothing's open. I reached out to all of them and I said, look, I'm going to start throwing events. And what I did was I started renting out mansion parties, and I would put up the money and I would bring on a couple guys, whether they were local promoters or other influential folks, and would throw these events and charge tickets. And
on the low key, like
and luckily Miami really, they weren't over the top with policing that whole situation, which is one of the big blessings of, timing, right? I'm just glad I landed there during COVID, because if I was up in Boston, like, you were handcuffed. Wow. Just like in New York City, like, you could do nothing. Miami was a little more laissez-faire. So we were able to throw these events, and then through those events, I developed a little bit more of a network, and things started to open up even more. And years prior, when I was up in Boston and I just broke my jaw, and it was before the hotels, I got my real estate license, and I was doing rentals. I was a young guy, man. Like, no one with money is going to trust me to buy a multi-million-dollar place. But Boston's full of colleges, right? So it's a lot of college students that are my age. So I can relate to you. Boston being not only the largest college city, but some of the most expensive colleges. You have MIT, BU, BC, Suffolk, all these amazing schools. So who's going there, right? All these international students, and their budgets are pretty much unlimited to find them apartments, and you're making a half month's fee, and it was great. And I just remember at the time loving it, but wanting to be out and wanting to get into the hotels, and my short-term thinking kind of overtook my long-term thinking at that time. But sure enough, these parties, and I'm in Miami, and I'm thinking, like, man, I really loved real estate. And I did what everybody in Miami did. I went out and I got a real estate license, right? Like, you can't bump into someone, like, you throw a rock, you're going to hit 10 real estate agents in Miami.
It's true.
And I knew that. And I was okay with it, like, this is a no ego game that we're all in at this point. So I didn't think about it that way. I said, look, I've saved some money. I've built this amazing network. Like, I'm pretty intelligent, educated. I'm going to try to, chase this path. Two friends of mine in Boston had done the same thing, and I kind of like mimicked them. They're two brothers, Manny and George Sarkis. They're monsters, $1 billion in sales for the firm I'm at in Boston. And I reached out to them. I said, guys, I noticed you pivoted into real estate. It's going really well. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about that? And we spent hours. Thankfully, these guys took enough time to kind of educate me, and they said, look, we're guys that have built these networks and great reputations. Like, I've never screwed anyone. Like, I'm not out drinking. Like, I'm always pretty together, even in those elements. So you gain respect over time. And they said, look, we pivoted into real estate, and it's been nothing but a blessing. So I followed their footsteps, man, and I ended up getting an interview for this firm, Douglas Elliman, who never hire. Like, you can't get hired if you don't have X amount of experience and X amount of sales. I had none of those things.
In Miami.
And I got a meeting with the CEO, Jay Parker, amazing guy, and ended up getting myself hired. But the promise was, look, I'm going to come into this company and I will go work for, as an apprentice, another broker of yours and really learn this business. And so I did. I partnered with this guy, Darren Tanzi, who's a killer. He's a huge broker in Miami. And anything I could do, man. You need a coffee, I was getting it. You need a ride, I was driving you. Like, restaurant reservation, let me make it. Like, anything I could do to justify him giving me his time. And I learned the business, and here I am, just about to break 100 million in transactions 3 years later in my career. And you sit back and you digest it, and you're like, man, like, you can only just keep fighting, right? Like, your plans, God doesn't really care about your plans. Like, you can only really just keep fighting and keep kind of battling, and when life kind of throws something at you and knocks you down, like, digest it, get up, shake off, and keep it moving. And that's luckily what happened with me, and it brought me to Miami, and all these opportunities that have come since, and all these amazing people I've met since. I can be nothing but grateful at this point.
It's fine. I want to touch base on something, kind of hearing your story. It made me remember myself as well. So I was always an athlete. I mean, still am, but to the point of, professional level. I was playing soccer my whole life. School was obviously embedded, but for me, it was more like, I'm good with my feet. I play soccer, right? COVID hit. Let's go back home. Can't play soccer anymore. We had a guy actually here. His name's Ryan Groth. He owns it's called Sales Transformation Group, and he was a baseball player. And we had that connection with sports because he was playing professional baseball as well. And then he got injured. Yeah. So talk to me with that mindset, because I think athletes particularly can really understand that, because it's a lifestyle, dude. You're training every day. You have to go through some sort of depression. Like, what was that?
No, listen, man, I'll tell you, everything in my life I owe to the principles and values I took on through sports. I was 4 years old. I remember my parents brought me to the rink, and I'm watching these older guys play, and they're hitting each other, and I'm crying. I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
My parents forced me out. So from the moment it started, it was a challenge. So I'm thinking I'm 4. I can't even stand on skates. I'm going to be doing that. I remember crying and crying. My dad just, hey buddy, it's all right. Like, let's try it. So he got me out there, and day one, it's getting over things, right? So then, like, as your career, you're young, like everyone gets a chance, but when they start to recognize if you've got some skill, like the pressure kind of builds, right? And you're constantly, hockey's 365, right? So if you're successful, you play at your high school during the season, but you're playing off season, you're playing summer hockey, you're playing spring hockey, all year round. You got to try out for these teams and hope that you make it, like some teams that you make and some that you don't, you have to kind of suck it up and keep moving. And that whole concept of like eating failures all day, it's just embedded as an athlete. Like, there's no pro athlete, there's no pro sports, with the exception of a few fighters, who go undefeated. Like, losing is part of winning.
Yep.
And
true.
So throughout my career in hockey, and I played for a D1 high school. I made it freshman year. I played all 4 years, and we were like a competitive town, right? And then after that, a D1 college came knocking, which is it's great, right? So you're excited about that, and then you're starting to get phone calls from teams that are out in the USHL and like development teams, and some of them are offering, hey, come on out and try out, and they don't pick you. And so you're like, all right, and you got to keep your shit together, man. You got to keep your confidence and hey, if there's things, and be honest with yourself, if there's things that didn't go well, what can I work on? So that whole mentality was with me my whole life. And forget the mindset, like the physical. You're cold all day long. It's painful. Your gear's wet. Your hands hurt. You're always injured. Like, you're getting hit out there. It's one of the most violent, aggressive, beautiful sports. But hockey's very taxing. I've had 7 surgeries. I've broke both my hands, my nose, my ankle, my face.
Wow.
And so it's kind of like par for the course to have nothing but adversity. And so for me, I think because I spent my whole life in that mindset, now out in business, it's kind of easy to eat shit. Like, I get disappointments, I just kind of laugh them off. Like, it's for me, you fight through all the disappointments for those 1 or 2 wins, right? Like, it's like 10, 12, 15 losses, a nice win. And then once you get that win, you don't enjoy it too much because you got 12 more losses between the next one. And so, it's never something I needed to think about or prepare for, but in talking with other people do highlight that. It's like, wow, man, like, that's got to be from sports. And so for that reason, I always encourage like my sister and her kids to, it doesn't have to be hockey, but get in sports. You learn that camaraderie, you learn what it's like to be in a locker room with other personalities and everyone in that room. Maybe you don't know everybody, but you have a common goal. What place do you play in that goal? How can I help him, or how can he? It's just all this collaboration that you do take with you as an adult into whatever it is you're doing business-wise. There's a lot of times that I have to work with people that I might not necessarily get along with, but there's a goal, right? So that you gotta flex. There's things that I'm still learning as a 39-year-old man that you have to be humble enough to say, like, wow, okay, just like the tryout, like maybe I could have done that better. Could I have adjusted that a little bit to potentially see a better result? And so, like a lot of that was sports related, I think.
And so that jump from Boston to Miami, was that more because, I don't want to call it an identity crisis, but
sure.
It's
a little.
It is, right?
Yeah,
no.
no.
Athletes, like, you're devoted
100%, man. Like, I think a goldfish will swim around in its bowl for so long, right?
Yeah.
And I was swimming in that Boston Bowl, and I was a young guy, man, making a lot of mistakes. Like, I was angry. I came home from what I thought was my destination to play pro hockey, and ended up in a hospital in a city I didn't know anybody. So I'm out cold, hooked up to all these machines in a hospital with a bunch of strangers, looking at a ceiling for almost 2 weeks with my jaw wired shut, in an induced coma because my whole head was swollen.
Wow.
So I'm laying there, and I'm 22, and I'm really like thinking through, like, okay, like, where's this gonna go? Like, is this gonna be something I can get through quick? And the team cut me right away.
Shit.
Yeah. Well, it's business, right? Like, you're out. there's a roster of folks that want your position. So it was very abrupt, and it caused me to grow up quick, you know. And when I left, you know, to your point, when I got out of that scenario and I got back home, you know, I was angry, man. Like I would be out, and you know, now I'm running hotels, and these hotels have bars, and it's nighttime, and it's a lot of that nightlife stuff, right? So I'm finding myself angry and like maybe getting in fights with guys, and just doing a lot of this growing as a young 20-year-old. And as I kind of got closer to 30, I realized, you know, I think I have a lot more to offer, but maybe it's time for a bigger bowl, because Boston, which is an amazing city, a lot of my connections there saw me as this young, crazy troublemaker. And, you know, I knew that I had learned a lot, and I knew I did a lot of growing, and I wanted the opportunity to kind of reintroduce myself with a lot of the lessons that, you know, at this point being learned. I moved when I was 32 years old.
Okay.
You know, to move at 32 it's
a big change.
Yeah, it's a big change. And I left my sister. I left the only people that I ever loved. Like, she had 3 kids who at the time I, and still am, extremely close to. It's the first time I ever saw my dad cry, you know, and I wasn't scared because I was so excited, but talking about it, it's scary. You know, I didn't have any plan, but I knew that I wanted more. I didn't know how I was going to get it, but you know, we go to bed at night with ourselves, right, and your own thoughts, and you can kind of like spend the day hiding from the realities, but when you get home, and it's reminding me of being in that hospital room, you know, you start talking to yourself. You're like, look, are you really maximizing your potential? Are you really where you think you should be? Like, if it, you know, no, that was my answer. No, I'm not.
So you think that like near-death experience is what continuously drives you day to day, just knowing the situation that we could have been?
So. I think when that happened, if we're being honest, I had been playing hockey since I was 4 years old, and now I'm 22. It's a long time, right? I think my mind was starting to wander. You know, there was other things that I was living out here, and I had no parents, so I'm like sneaking out and I'm hanging with and I was a fighter, so I would be one of the guys who dropped the gloves and fight. I wasn't hanging out with the successful first and second line guys. I was hanging out with the other guys who were fighting, and then like, you know, I smoked weed for the first time. Like, just life was distracting me, I think, a little bit more. So I love to say that the injury was why my career ended, and maybe on paper it is. But I think my destination was already going in another direction. And so that was God's way of just saying, hey, look, you're done here. Like, let's turn the page. And so, you know, being in that hospital room and reassessing what's important to me, you know, like, it made a big impact. And the answer was very clear. I want to be more and do more so that the people I love can do less. You know, my sister is my best friend. Like, her kids are my kids. They're teachers. Her and her husband, they're both teachers. Unbelievable people. But they're not going to be super rich, right? So it's like, they're out there, they're raising their kids, they're giving them all the love, and I want to be Uncle Rye, who's able to show them another avenue, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's really where in the whole drive down to Miami, you know, I don't think I even put the radio on once. I can
believe that.
I was just in my head.
Yeah.
Like, okay, where am I gonna, like, short term and long term, back and forth. Like, okay, do I have an Airbnb yet? Yep. Okay, he approved me, so I'm bouncing Airbnbs. I'm applying for jobs. But that's just like what we said when you first walked in, time travel. Like, yeah, today I might be doing that, but in my head, I'm already 3 years down. Like, I already got the hotel job. I already met a bunch of people. I'm going to create a network. Like, where am I? You're never really in the moment because you're putting all these plans together. And thankfully, I think if you dial into a plan and you commit, you can get it, right? So that move to Miami was the first time that I was able to say, okay, you know, I made a shot. I put in the work. I put in the honest effort. I took inventory on myself almost daily to see what I could fix and adjust. I don't think I could have done that when I was 22 years old. I think it had to be when I was more mature and had gone through a lot of pains and mistakes. And timing's everything. So I think the timing of me making that move is what's led to my success, right? Because now, in my day-to-day now, like, I work with pro athletes, I work with like extremely successful people, and almost 99% of my clientele are all wealthier than me, more intelligent than me. So it's you can be nothing but honest with those people, and your effort shows, and there's no bullshit. And so that accountability has taken a long time, right? So like at 22, 23, I think those opportunities would have went right over my head. I think through all those struggles and failures and kickbacks, it created this element inside of me to really want to present my best self. And now I'm seeing the blessings of it.
So one of the things before we get into the real estate side, because I want to dig into that too. Yeah. You mentioned a lot throughout, I guess the injury caused a lot of anger, right? Yeah. You were talking about being angry, always being mad, always wanting to fight, gloves off.
Yeah.
Always being a troublemaker. I can relate to that as well. Always got into trouble myself. I guess for someone, going through that path, that wrong path of, mistakes, trouble, being angry all the time, what words of advice would you give them to not be like that?
I mean, look, I think when people are angry, it can always be traced back to being angry at yourself, right? Like, you really have to look in and really, I always say take inventory, but it's so important because I was angry. But at what? I was angry at the things I wasn't doing. I was angry at the progress I wasn't creating for myself. I was angry because I thought I was owed something that didn't come to me. And that's all bullshit. Like no one owes you anything. So all of that anger, you have to really drop the ego and recognize, this is a lot on me. You can really start tracing things back. I say it all the time about traffic. You're in traffic. It's in people watching this. Like, I really want you to try this. You're in traffic, right? And there's a guy behind you trying to get in front of you and whatever. You see it, and then he gets up and passes you. Maybe you hit your brake, and now all of a sudden you two like hate each other. You don't even know each other. Roll your window down and wave and smile, and that person's gonna go from angry and smile and wave back, right? So it's like this, it's a funny concept of...
I'm just thinking in my head, that's crazy.
And I've tested it out, and I've tried it, and it made me realize, like, okay, do I want to be angry and aggressive at everybody, and what's that going to yield me, right? Like me constantly projecting my insecurities on you, where's that going to get me, right? So I really needed to dig in on what I wanted to fix about me. And whether that's finding God or finding family or adjusting habits or whatever it is for someone, you got to be honest with yourself. And the moment I started doing that, I saw things get better. And I mean the people I was around, the environments I was finding myself in, the financial successes that would come along with it. Like these things started to happen that I'd always wanted, and I never knew how to get it until I started being a little more honest with myself. And so like that anger and all that, like, look, we're alpha males, right? Like there's no hiding that. But, I think now I'm a little bit more encouraged to let people be and let me be and, put out the best I can. And if I get that same thing back, great. And if it's reciprocated, awesome. And if it's not, keep it moving. There's a lot of people out there. So yeah, I mean, it's growth. It's being honest with yourself.
So taking that concept, which is great words of advice, by the way, moving forward, now we're talking, I understand. So you have the childhood, the upbringing, the sports, that traumatic event that happened, that transition from point A to point B. Now you're in a competitive market in a competitive city with high clientele that pretty much either it's sink or swim, it's shark eats shark.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish yourself in that space, in the real estate side to be the best?
That's a great question, man. I mean, look, Miami is full of monsters. Dina Golden-Tear, $1 billion a year. She's a beast. Dora, I mean, you've got a slew of brokers who are doing, hundreds of $1 million transactions per year. So it can be intimidating, but it goes back to sports. Like, focus on yourself. Like it's easy to get distracted by the people who are seemingly right next to you doing way more, right? And so, I'm guilty of it. I look over and I always try to see, what brokers' numbers are looking like. For me, it's focusing on what I'm great at and letting the flowers arrange themselves. What I'm great at is chasing data. Like, I'm single, I don't have kids. So my time is yours if you're my client. Will it always be that way? I don't know. Who knows? But right now, that's what it is. So I'm always chasing data. If it comes to a client who's expressed interest with me, you know, I'm not gonna sell you anything. Like these guys, like I said, they've all done great things in their lives and in their careers. So I'm not here to encourage or sell. I'm here to give you as much information and data as I possibly can, as fast as I can give it. When people come down into the city, it's not, hey, let's go look at places. It's, hey, let's go grab lunch. Like, let me learn a little bit about you. Let's go visit a few coffee places that I love. Let's go hit up a couple lunch spots. Like, let me show you this city and get an understanding for what you take to. And then through that process, you know, I learned that, oh, maybe you have 2 daughters that are going to be staying here. Okay, let's get like maybe an area that...
Building that relationship.
Yeah, and trying to understand. And so for me, it's a long game. If we close a deal, great. If we don't, I just met someone and we had a great day. And so that was my mentality, of just kind of taking it a little slower and really making sure that the things that I can control go well, because there's a lot of things I can't control. I can't control if someone accepts your offer. I can't control if a property passes an inspection. There's a lot of things that I can't maneuver through. But what I can do is make sure that you have all the information to make your decision, that I'm presenting options that are related to what you've expressed, and then we go from there, man, and just have fun with it. We don't do anything as real estate agents. We're not splitting atoms here, you know. We're here to be someone that you can trust when you're trying to make a financial decision, and you know that we're down here working for you, and that when we do finally get close to a finish line, that we make the process as smooth as possible, right? And in having that support of an amazing firm like Douglas Elliman, who the company I work for, it helps as well, because if I run out of answers and if there's something I don't know, I'm not going to try to swim through it. I'll tell you, hey, look, give me a day, let me get that for you. And I have a great team behind me that enables me to do that. So you know, I meet guys like Kaiser and Kurt, the 2 guys that you're going to have on the show. Like, these are monsters, you know, and these guys are giving me opportunities to represent them in transactions that they're making in Miami. And you know, to your question, I try to be as open with them as I can, whether it's good news, bad news. If there's answers that they need, I try to be the first one that gets them. Just be a good tool, right? And
be of value.
Yeah. Try to add value and make the experience enjoyable. Look, these guys are going to buy real estate with or without me.
That's a fact.
You know, they're going to buy it with or without me. If I'm not answering the phone, remember the 100 people you throw a rock and you'll hit? We're all real estate agents in Miami. So you just got to give them a reason to want to continue with you. And I'll tell you, you know, the people I like to work with, when they see that you are of value, you don't have to stress out about losing them, because they got to where they are being honorable, and if you reciprocate, typically that finds itself, right?
It does. It really does. So I have a quick question now. You're talking about real estate, and I understand building the relationships, being authentic. Now, as someone in the space of real estate in Miami, because there's like a saying, it's like Miami's fake money, right? I guess, how do you distinguish someone that, you know, it's hard. It's a facade, or like, oh, man, like, you know,
it's hard, man. I have. So it's a lot of what you just said, right? So the whole crypto wave and like all this, like Miami's known for scammers and all this stuff. Like, I think it's really like, you know, what kind of glasses do you have on that you're seeing these things? Like, I used to see that too. I started to learn quickly that people are gonna call me for a lot of different reasons. Some of them are like Kaiser. He calls, he knows what he wants, he's already done his own research, he wants someone that's going to make the process simple, and he moves. Then you have folks that are interested, but they're not ready. So you still have to go through the paces, right? Like, you still want to give them information. You still, if they fly in, I'm going to make time for you, whether it's a quick coffee, a lunch, or dinner. And then I have folks that do nothing but waste your time, and it's not up to me to decide if you're going to be one or the other. It's up to me to just perform, right? And so again, I'm a tool. So if you're a bullshitter, I'm going to eventually find out, but I'm not going to treat you that way, even if I think that at the beginning, because I've been wrong. You know, I've read books the wrong way. When I met Kurt, you know Kurt?
Yeah.
When I met him, man, and I'll say this story right in front of him. Kaiser introduced me to him, and Kaiser's kid's always fucking decked out, looks amazing, handsome as fuck, like always put together. So you know what you're dealing with when you meet him.
Yeah.
Kurt, man, like, you know, like he'll he's a beast. He'll be in the suit. But when I met him, man, he's got like a black T-shirt on of like it was like a stuffed animal holding a knife and like jeans. And like, I didn't know what to expect, man. He's like this burly guy from South Africa. And this story is amazing. We all go out and Kaiser's in town. He's like, I'm bringing my buddy Kurt. Doesn't tell me anything. Nothing about this guy. Okay, you guys want to come to dinner? I'm taking a few athlete clients. So I had this pro basketball player and a pro football player. Like, it was like a nice group. And I invited them to come, and we all went to this like sushi Japanese steakhouse called Gecko, super well known. And we're sitting down, and I look at the end of the table, and like, you know, in groups like that, it's usually order for the table, right? Like, we're all just kind of firing stuff out, and a lot of it's raw sushi. And I didn't know at the time that Kurt wasn't into sushi. And at one point I looked down, and he's got chopsticks and a lighter, and he's like pretending to light the sushi. And I'm like, holy shit, like, who's this guy that Kaiser just brought to dinner?
Yeah.
But he's got a paddock on. Yeah, so you're like, so now I don't know what to think.
Yeah.
Could this watch be fake? Who is this person? Like, just to your question, like, you don't know.
That's true.
So I didn't change the way I behaved. I didn't switch anything. I just treated him like I would treat anyone else. And by the end of the dinner, man, like, he won everyone over. The guy's hysterical. He's funny. He doesn't talk about himself.
Yeah.
Kaiser doesn't talk about himself. These guys actually, they keep a lot to the chest. Like, if they feel like you're worth it, you know, maybe they'll share more. But that first dinner, like, all of us were just feeling each other out. And the meal ends by Kurt pulling me aside, and he looks at me with it, and he's got this like hardcore South African accent. I'd embarrass myself trying to do it. But he said, hey, I understand you got Kaiser a really nice investment here. And I told him about the project, and he's like, I'll take one. I'm like, all right, let's talk. Like, let's talk Monday, you know, like, dinners aren't really where I like to have business talk, right? Like, and I went to kind of like, not dismiss him, but I was like, yeah, we'll talk Monday. And I went to finish, and he grabbed my arm and he pulled me back, and he said, I'm not one of these people that bullshits. I really want one. And he wired the money the next day. So it's like, you have no idea.
What a baller.
You have no idea. And so for me to be good at what I do, like, it's judgment free, man. Like, I'm here to give you as much information as I can based on what you throw at me. And if you decide to make a decision to move forward, I'm here to help. And if not, maybe I just met a new friend, and, you know, we got a coffee, and it's a great experience either way. So I try not to judge on that, but it's full of it, man. Like, Miami's got a lot of like the guys who are, you know, you don't know nowadays what jewelry's real. Like, typically the you know, you read someone's watch, or you try to see like how they're put together, and you can kind of somewhat get a read. But Miami's very difficult with that, because there's a lot of people that are going to give you that impression that end up being duds, right? And then you're going to have other people who are a little bit more reserved, who have everything, and you just...
That's very true.
Yeah, and the only way that you're going to know is just by giving them a consistent version of you, right?
Yeah. We just had a guy, Brandon, he did 85 million in 1 year. He does real estate investment. But dude, the guy's dressed in like a basic like TJ Maxx shirt, like pants, like Levi's, and like just regular shoes. You would never know. So I 100% agree on that. I know we're a little short on time now, but for any closing statements, I guess for anyone young, anyone hungry, maybe someone looking to perhaps go into real estate, or anyone looking to, you know, be in that competitive market of Miami, or just in general in life going through, you know, hardships but wanting to be that successful entrepreneur, what would you have to say to them?
You're good at this.
Thank you.
Listen, I will tell you this. It's a lesson that I've learned quite recently. Just try to put yourself around the best people you can, right? Like, I flew out here because my good friend had nothing but great things to say about you. And being a guy who's almost 40 years old, like, I didn't grow up in that arena of like networking with strangers, like, let's go to these conventions and these seminars. Like, I always thought it was bullshit. It isn't. You know, try to be around people who are like-minded. Try to seek out groups of people that are chasing the same things that you're chasing. If it's real estate, whatever it is, roofing, whatever your industry is, try to identify people who are doing what you want to do and figure out a way to get in the room with them. Add value and pick up as much as you can, right? So
I love that. Add value and pick up as much as you can.
That's it, brother.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for the conversation, man. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited for this weekend too.
I love it,
Can't
bro.
wait to see the action, man. I've heard a lot about it.
It's going to be a good one, man.
If you're watching, make sure you go pick up this book. this guy's 27 years old, killing it. Probably a lot of information you're going to want to know in there. So
There you go.
yeah,
See you guys
for
in the
sure,
next
man.
one.
Thanks, guys.